My hands hurt. So this is my commonplace book, commonplace binder. We can talk about that in a little bit. This is the Commonplace Binder 101 playlist and video number 58, which means we are 58 of 100 videos through the year. It's a little bit more than that because I started with some random videos at the beginning. This is this title. That is the next video. So I'm going to go through these one column at a time. And let's get to it. My hands. Why do they hurt? Because I've been trying to do stuff in here. Or at least that used to be the problem. There was also the problem of playing lots of video games and just typing. So this marker used in the thumbnail has nothing to do with anything. It's just a little Crayola marker. Ultraviolet. Kind of reminded me of the ultraviolet light from the My Cousin Oscar video. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's pretty fun to watch in the middle of the winter. But that is not what time of year this is. So let's get to all this stuff. Limited products. Limited products you can see in the dark in Iceland. No. There are limited products that you can use for a commonplace book, commonplace binder, because like you need a place to keep the stuff. So if you're using a book, then it goes in a book, and if you're using a binder, it goes in a binder. Now there are a lot of varieties of those, but that's kind of the main idea. And then paper goes in there. If you have rings, you will need a hole puncher. You can have tabs at the top, either by individual tabs or cut out paper with scissors and then tape it to the page. So you would need scissors and tape, but that's about it, other than a writing utensil. So, getting a lot of dust in my face. Ugh. Cluttered desk. Is that what happens when you have a cluttered desk? Do you just have a whole bunch of dust clouds? No, I mostly have dust where I am because this area has a substantial amount of air pollution relative to the country I live in, and so it can get a little dusty sometimes. And so if I'm not like really militant about cleaning the place, there's always dust build up. How does that relate to a cluttered desk? And why don't I draw on my commonplace binder? Well, if there's not room on the desk, then it's kind of difficult to draw on it. And so I'll have to take the pages out and then draw on those and then put the stuff back in. And so I don't really do that because I don't have the space, but I also don't really have the things to draw with, and I don't have the experience to draw with the things. And at the very beginning, when I started this whole process, I tried to cut down on the drawing and the charts and all the other stuff because I was terrible at explaining myself with words. So if you've watched the beginning of this video, you probably understand what I'm talking about. But it was way worse a long time ago when I could barely open my mouth because I just wouldn't make noise in general. Museum artwork. So the museum artwork is obviously going to be better than anything I can make on my desk in terms of how pretty it looks and the materials used. And it's not that all the old things were good and the new ways are causing problems. It's like sometimes people hold on to the best things because if they have to get rid of one item, they're going to get rid of the one that's worse. Like that's that should be pretty obvious. Wanting to step into a museum, wanting to step into a commonplace binder. I'm not really sure what's going on here. So if you want to step in and leave a comment down below, that'd be great. Unfortunately, this isn't a live stream or a live react to the point where you could be like, oh, I have opinions in the chat, which could be very fun. Maybe we'll do that in the future. I don't know. But yeah, wanting to step in to my commonplace binder memories. So sometimes what's really cool is having a bad time. It's cool to have a bad time. No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's cool to have a good time. So sometimes if I'm not feeling so great, I can look at my old stuff and be like, wow, that was great. Things aren't too bad. And sometimes all I have to do for that is just write down what I did in that day, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. So it can be kind of good for that. Takes a mindset. So the mindset necessary is the I am going to save all of my stuff mindset. And then look at it later. Like that's really it. You need those two things. I'm going to save everything, and I'm going to actually review everything. So you don't necessarily need to save everything, because then you won't be able to review it. And you don't need to review everything, because there might be some stuff that's just kind of bad, and you should probably toss it. Limited skill set. So this sort of skill set doesn't really transfer, as far as I know. But the stuff you hold on to, I almost said hoard, which is kind of what it is at the beginning. because people don't really know what they're doing, so they either store way too much or not enough, and then they're like, crap, why is this out of balance? So it is a limited skill set because there's nothing else that really works like this, other than taking notes, I guess. But, you know, the things you take notes on will probably be valuable, or at least a portion of them will be. So the more you do it, the better at it you should get. But maybe not. Maybe something will happen. You'll be like, I stopped using English over the summer. I was only speaking French, and now I don't know how to write anymore. Well, I mean, if you keep one of these, you'll be able to remember what you were thinking beforehand and use the exact same thought patterns that you had behind. Oh my god. And you will also be able to use the same thought patterns that you had before the summer. But yeah, stop using English. I actually did have an experience like that in the summer of, I believe it was 2013. It's a long time ago. What is that? No? 2013? I don't know. I don't remember. Unfortunately, I learned French mostly around teenage girls, as I was a teenage boy at the time, because, you know, back then it was pretty much only girls taking French. And so, at least in the United States where I live, and I guess the United States in general, because the camp had almost all girls. But yeah, I learned French around teenage girls because I was a teenage boy, but also that was before puberty, so I was like 5 feet tall. And so my French used to sound a little bit like a little girl, or somebody trying to sound like a little girl. And then afterwards I went back to school, and my French teacher was from Germany, and so I was like, I need to switch to a different language, and then I found out that my German teacher was learning French. So my French accent is just gone, along with most of the knowledge. Expensive looking. If you have an expensive looking commonplace book or commonplace binder, will you be able to preserve or restore your former French knowledge? Maybe. Probably not. It doesn't need to be expensive looking, and it needs to have the actual value. So if it's full of value and it looks like it's very valuable, it might hype you up. So sometimes the expensive looking thing will be helpful, not because it actually is, but because you might convince yourself it will be. But yeah, guides. Where are you going to get an actual proper guide? I don't know. There aren't really any guides for how to commonplace properly, because it's like, how do you write in your diary properly? Or like, how do you write in your diary properly? Or how do you write in your journal properly? Or how do you take the best scientific notes possible? Well, there might be a little bit of a framework, but at some point you kind of have to do the thing yourself, because it's the results you get, or it's the opinions you have, or it's the quotes that you find very interesting, and then you write down stuff related to those, and you sort all that. But yeah, how does this apply to why I don't draw my commonplace binder? Because we do have to stay on topic. Cover. Okay, so the cover is the most important part when it comes to drawing, and like what's inside, as far as I can tell, because the cover will just kind of tell you, generally speaking, what the thing's going to look like. So if the cover doesn't have any drawing on it, it'd be really weird to have some drawings on the inside. And because I don't want to draw anything on the cover, and I am going to be using this sort of thing. By the way, this is the list of all the videos I'll be working on this year for this playlist. I just grabbed let's show an example. This is number 58, so that's drawing, and so this is why I don't draw in my commonplace binder. Just like that. And so yeah, I don't draw it on the inside because I don't draw on the outside. Moving on. Keeping it clean. So you might have noticed that the back of this has a little bit of stuff on it. Uh-oh, what's that? Is that mildew? Is that mold? Is that just something else? Well, I'm not really sure. Because in the general place that I live in, there is also a lot of mildew and mold. So it might be that the air quality is worse than I said beforehand. So yeah, sometimes that sort of thing will happen, and there's not a huge amount you can do about it other than just transferring all your stuff to another binder. But if you do that, then all the pages will transfer, of course, and so you might just have the problem of transferring all the good stuff and also the bad stuff. But yeah, keeping it clean. Generally speaking, if you pour water all over something, it should probably replace it. And the good thing about having a binder as opposed to a book is instead of just tossing the entire book, you could just replace whatever page got wet in the binder. Compelled to add them. So am I compelled to add drawings? No. So you might be compelled to add them. You might feel like it's not a true commonplace book if it doesn't have all the things from this famous person. And if the famous person you're going by is like Da Vinci, then yeah, they're going to be drawings. The problem with that is this is a binder. I'm doing something slightly different, and eventually I'm hoping for this sort of thing to be in schools for children. So like the children will probably draw some things. Maybe not. So if they're in elementary school, I assume they will try to draw things, and if they're in high school, I assume they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I have something involving the periodic table coming up for chemistry class. I should probably just save a copy of the periodic table. I feel like that would be much more efficient than a picture of a frog I made when I was 5 years old. You know what I mean? Like, the frog might be super cool looking, and it might be, if it's drawn perfectly, like, if it looks like an actual frog and you have all the details set up, it might be useful for biology class, but if you're not in that situation, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Handwriting. So, why are we going to focus on drawing when we're writing everything by hand? Well, you don't necessarily have to write everything by hand. You could print the stuff out, like type it up, print it out, and then work on it from there. That's actually my preferred way of doing it, but I haven't done it in a long time because I treat the binder as more of a learning tool. And so what happened was I used the tool to get good at doing stuff on my computer. And so now I don't really use the physical aspect. Now, some people might think that is not a great opinion to share when they're talking about how to do a thing and saying, oh, I don't do the thing anymore. And that's not that I don't like the thing. It's not that the thing wasn't useful. It's that what I gained from it allowed me to move on to more efficient methods. And I wouldn't have been able to do those more efficient methods if I didn't start with this in the first place. And I might come back to it eventually. It's just, you know, my hands hurt. So I gotta work on some stuff first. Production process. So in my production process of making videos, how does all this get put together? Well, I already shared, it's on the list. Drawing. Wow. But where does this list come from? Well, this list comes from a giant document on my computer that I have technically stored in the cloud, but I also make a backup every so often, and I will store that on my computer as well as multiple other locations just in case, because I have a habit of not making enough copies of something and then the other copies get destroyed in some way. So, yeah. Production process, this comes from a giant, like an absolutely giant document. I think it's like 170 pages right now, but I think the first 18 pages are just prep for the 100 different categories below it. So what I did was I figured out 100 different categories that I thought, you know, people would want to watch videos on. So like introduction, that's a category. And I mean, I guess I could pick the binder up again and show you the titles or the keywords that go into the titles, like drawing, draw. It's not that they make up the whole thing, it's just they go into it. And so from those little categories, I looked around on the platform to see what was in other people's titles, and then made a big outline based on that, and then I wrote a script which basically expanded on every individual fact, and I didn't like some of them, so I got rid of them. And then when I didn't have a full 20, what I would do is I would just take a thing and I would split it into two different little text blurbs. And so once I had 20 and I was satisfied with that, that's when I was ready to make the video. Although I wouldn't just do it one at a time, I would do it at least 4 at a time. Well, originally it was 1, and then 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then 16. And I tried to do 32, but I ended up doing 16 and then 8, and this is, what, like the second or third one I'm on today? Like, it's a little bit of a mess. So I guess in the future what I'll be doing is only sets of 16 or 8. And that sounds pretty sustainable. No? production process. First step is to figure out how to start. If you can't start, then you can't make the good stuff because you haven't started. So like the thing holding you back is you have a whole bunch of potential commonplace things, but none of them are binders and they're all books and you don't want to screw up a book. Well, just get a crappy binder, toss some pages in, bam, there you go. And then, you know, if you want to switch over immediately, you get like 10 pages into the binder, and then you just start transferring the best stuff into the book. So, first steps, out of the way. Computer trouble. Why did the lighting change? It's because I have computer trouble. So my monitors turn off every 15 minutes. This is probably a running gag at this point. So I'm just going to change the volume, turn off my headset again, just in case I have music going, which I do not. And yeah, one of a kind. So, is this a one-of-a-kind presentation? No, this is the 58th video like this. But your commonplace should be a one-of-a-kind. So I'm not really sure how you would copy someone for this, unless you just copied their whole thing. I do say in some of my notes, and I will say in the next year's worth of videos, that having a copy of somebody else's commonplace book might actually be good if it's like your parent or your grandparent or a classmate. And it'd be good if you had the classmate's commonplace book, because if we allow the commonplace books into schools, because we say, you know, having phones and AI and all this other stuff in schools is maybe not a great idea, but people still need additional information because once they get out of school, they're not really entering an environment of zero information. It's more like a complete overload of information. So if they have an information management tool, which also shows them the best information, it's kind of hard to argue against that. But that's for next playlist. Trying to seek a solution. Yeah, so if you're a little bit worried about your kid spending time with the wrong information, it might be that you make them something which has what you consider to be the right information, or get them involved in a process that will be all about discovery and curiosity and something that takes a long time rather than immediate gratification. Some call it progress, to make all the things super fast all the time. In some ways that actually makes more sense than what I'm saying here, which is basically slow down. Don't do the thing as fast, or as quickly, or with as much haste as before. I don't know. So the next video is progressing with digital. That is a trimmed down version of the title. So I hope you enjoyed the video on why I don't draw in my commonplace binder, which is basically my hands hurt and I kind of just don't use the binder in the first place because I used it for so long that I figured out how to use some digital stuff. And yeah, if you're curious about that, check the next one on how I progressed with the digital stuff. With that, I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.